Dominic Raab has boasted how post-Brexit Britain wants to be energetic champions of free and open trade as he continued to ramp up negotiations with global nations for lucrative trade deals in 2020. The Foreign Secretary is in Australia as part of a tour of the country to promote free trade deals during what is turning out to be a crucial year after the UK left the European Union on January 31. Dominic Raab said a close relationship with the Southern Hemisphere superpower is a key part of the vision for a global Britain. The former Brexit secretary wrote in a column for the Australian Financial Review the UK is forging ahead as a self-confident, global nation, ready to reinvigorate our ties with old friends. He also described a deep relationship between the UK and Australia and even joked about their sporting rivalry, which sees the two cricketing nations clash in the Ashes at least once every 2 years. Mr. Raab also outlined why Britain wants to be energetic champions of free and open trade following Brexit. The former Brexit secretary wrote, "On my first trip following our departure from the EU, I'm proud to be in Australia, one of the UK's greatest partners and closest. You can see our deep relationship in the real rapport between our people, our vibrant cultural links, our world-leading educational exchanges, and our mostly friendly sporting rivalry. We want to be energetic champions of free and open trade, so we can boost small businesses, cut the cost of living, reduce barriers and create the well-paid jobs of the future for the next generation of Australians and Britons." Mr. Raab met Australian counterpart Maurice Payne on Thursday, describing Australia as a natural partner. Trade between the UK and Australia was worth a huge £18.3 billion in 2019. Speaking ahead of his trip to Australia, Mr. Raab said the UK had a multi-billion-pound trade relationship with investment in both directions, supporting jobs and growth in both economies. Speaking on the BBC's Politics Live programme in October, former Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard said, "I do worry that people are starting to imagine that a trade deal with Australia is somehow a substitute for being on the doorstep of a market with 500 million people. It's not." Mr. Raab will also visit Japan, Singapore and Malaysia over the coming days. The UK is hoping to conclude quick trade deals with Australia, New Zealand, Japan and the US following its departure from the EU. But there are now fears a bumper deal between the UK and US is under threat after reports suggested rising tensions between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. The US president was apoplectic with fury after Mr. Johnson allowed Chinese technology firm Huawei into non-central elements of Britain's 5G network, a Westminster source has revealed. British officials said they were taken aback by the force of the president's language in a phone call made to the Prime Minister last week, according to reports from the Financial. In a separate report from the Evening Standard, it was claimed Mr. Trump slammed the phone down on Mr. Johnson in anger. The discussion between the two leaders was also described as very difficult by another senior official. There were further fears Mr. Johnson's post-Brexit trade deal with the US may be under threat after American Vice President Mike Pence revealed the UK's decision to grant access to Huawei may be a deal-breaker. Mr. Pence told CNBC his administration did not believe using the Chinese firm's assets were in the security or privacy interests of either country. He warned that this remains a real issue between Mr. Johnson and. When asked how disappointed he was about the British granting access to Huawei, Mr. Pence told CNBC, "I think the president's been very clear." Secretary of State Mike Pompeo reiterated it this week. The United States is very disappointed that the United Kingdom has decided to go forward with Huawei. I never comment on the president's private conversations with me or others. But we're profoundly disappointed.